So the way employers should use testing is as another data point in their evaluation of candidates. Where testing goes wrong for the employer part is when they put too much emphasis on it, and they really shouldn't. I mean, they're looking at job applications, resumes, CVs, your LinkedIn profile, and certainly maybe many rounds of interviews. That should carry more weight than just one exam or one type of test. But unfortunately, sometimes they place a little bit too much emphasis on the test or exam. And you can't control that. You just have to do the best you can with these exams and tests and be who you are. But just understand that point. And I'm going to share with you, if you have a moment, I'll share with you a little example of me, a personal example of how I found out later how the exam was sort of held against me. I was hired by the company anyways, but it made them pause about hiring me. And it was nothing that I did wrong. It was just me, but it actually worked out for the best for the company. But I'll give you a little perspective on that. So let me share this little story with you. And this was around the DISC profile. I took the DISC profile. I was applying to a company. I was one of the final candidates, and I did the DISC profile, and at the dominance, influence, conscientious, and steadiness. And I was a high I, as you know, high for influence, and it's just a personality test that a lot of people will take. So I took this personality test, and didn't even know that they had some concerns around it, but they hired me, and I did very well with that company. So I'm sitting around a conference room with the CEO of the company and other vice presidents and myself, and about 10, 12 people. And we're learning about the DISC profile in greater detail from a consultant, how to apply it and ways to construct job descriptions around it. And just, it's kind of a little educational session around the DISC profile, DISC personality for us. And so the consultant, she's talking about different things with DISC profile and how the different categories of the different, high I, high C, whatever it might be, people. And then out of nowhere, the CEO, who's there, and I'm there, and a bunch of other people are there, he says, I totally understand Ballinger now, and the problem we had when we hired him. Okay, now, you could hear, as they say the phrase, you could hear a pin drop, right? I'm like, there with all these people, my peers and the CEO, and he says this, I totally understand Ballinger now, and the problem we had when we hired him. And I'm like, and I've been with the company now, at this point, for 4 years, maybe 5 years. And I'm like, what problem you had? And everybody else is kind of looking at me, and they're looking at the CEO, and they're looking at me, and they're looking at the CEO, and the trainer, the consultant. She doesn't really know what to say. And so I, and because they're looking at me because they know I'm not going to let that pass. It's just not who I am. Remember who I am, I'm a little more confrontational, and I won't let that pass. In a good way, I'm confrontational, but I won't let that pass. So I see the CEO, and I say to him, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And remember at this, well, not remember, but let you know, at this point, I'd already been hired by the company, been there about 4 or 5 years, and been promoted twice, and been a very successful employee for them, I thought, in every way, until the CEO says, well, that explains the problem we had when we hired him, and me, and little old me. And so I said, well, what was the problem? What's the problem here? And so he says, well, when we hired you, we had you do your DISC profile. And I'm like, uh-huh. And as you know, you're high I, you're high influence. And I'm like, uh-huh. Okay, so far, what's the problem? And he said, well, the position we're hiring you for, which was a director of training position, was actually a position to develop and basically build out this whole thing, and we would sell courses, all right? It's not Udemy, it's a different type of thing. We're for an industry association, and we'd sell courses, and I had to basically build this thing from the scratch and build this whole thing up. That's why I built it and got promoted a couple times. So, but he said what we were looking for was somebody who was much more on the conscientious part, right? On that whole what is that S part, right? Thoughtful, supportive, patient part of that. And because they thought, well, you're an educator, you're training, we'd rather have you be that. So when we got your DISC profile back and it showed you were a high influencer, we thought, oh, this guy seems so terrific, but he was not high C, high conscientious. He was high influence, is what he was, or steadiness. They're looking for high S, high steadiness. And I was more high I, right? And so they were like, what do? We want to give this person the job offer. We do the DISC profile as just a thing that they normally did. And this is what he explained to me. And then all of a sudden, we weren't sure what to do. And we really kind of took a chance on you and decided to hire you anyways, even though your DISC profile didn't really fit the mold we were looking for. And I said to him, because I was not letting this go, And I said, so you were basing everything at the end on this formal test that you just did as a formality and forgot all the interviews, forgot all the other stuff, forgot all the strengths I brought, you forgot everything because when this one test is just throwing you off. And then the consultant person's like, she's dying. And he's like, well, yeah, that's kind of it because we kind of wrote the job description and thought we would need a high S. And I said, that's your problem. I mean, this is CEO, right? I'm just not letting this go. I'm like, that's the problem. That's the problem right there. You wrote a bad job description. You were looking for somebody to be like a teacher, but you weren't looking for somebody to be a leader and grow a division and sell something. That's who you should have been looking for. And you know who you should have been looking for? Somebody who was high, like me, who proved that was the way you needed to go. Good thing you did not hire a high S, because you would have had a patient person who never would have got anything, would have been patient, but never would have got anything done. You need somebody to drive that business. Oh, I was in my element. I was going. And like everybody's like, oh gosh, there they go. And the consultant said, you know what, Steve was right. Sometimes what happens is you think you know the personality that you want, but you have to really look at that job description closer. If you're looking for someone to deliver training like in a classroom setting, a high S might be the right person. But in this case, it was not so much the training, it was development of a brand new division, a new product line, a new sales line, and you needed somebody to lead that. And thus, yeah, either a high D, someone who's really results-oriented or direct could be a person, or certainly a high I like Steve would work out well. And it looks like Steve worked out well because he's not doing that anymore. He's now leading that and other divisions as part of that. And the CEO was like, yeah, that's right. That's why that's what I learned. That's what I meant when we struggled with that. So there's a little personal story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed remembering it. But the point taken from that is you are who you are. And sometimes companies screw up, they just do. And that's why, don't take it personally if somebody, turns you down or whatever, because it's not you. Most times it's them. All right. So take that with what it's worth and let's move on with the rest of the course. But I hope you understand that, you're great and somebody's going to hire you. And sometimes you got dumb CEOs because CEOs are not necessarily the smartest people in the room all the time. And that happens. Don't let that CEO title mislead you to think there's some celebrity or some brilliant person. Some of them are. Some of them are just absolutely brilliant, but some of them, they're dumb as a rock. And in this case, it was a good example of that, in my opinion.